A small Cambridge inn called the White Horse. The Reformation came.
Restless is raw, unscripted, reformed radio.
Well, Pastor Michael, we were just talking about what to drink and enjoying our introduction. And so I am going to open my cold one of the night, which is a Liquid Death sparkling water, which may or may not be toxic.
Sponsor us, please.
Yeah. Liquid Death, if this is the kind of thing you'd like to see in a sponsorship, I am the cheap date. You can start sending me Liquid Death in the mail. But
a niche reform podcast would like your sponsorship.
We might be the funniest people in the reform world right now, willing to laugh. But happy Reformation Day, Pastor Michael.
Yeah, happy Reformation Day. What a day, huh? I love getting to celebrate Reformation Day. It's like the time of harvest and fall. It's, All Saints Day tomorrow. There's just this like this time of year I find to be very exciting.
Yeah, so it is our Reformation Day, our Reformation IRL live stream. And so we're stoked. We're stoked to be back at Restless. We are going to keep doing we're going to have some fun with some good raw unscripted reformed radio.
And it's season 2. It's officially season 2 of Restless. But maybe before we get started, we should say that to commemorate season 1, the last 4 years. Yes.
Yeah.
We did one season, 4 years. It was great. It was a post-mortem on the Young Restless and Reformed. And to commemorate that, you can get the shirts that we're wearing right now. So we have 2 different styles of this RIPYRR shirt. And that is to commemorate the time that we've had doing this post-mortem, and it will continue. Also, it's a pretty cool shirt. I'm pretty stoked with how they came together. Shout out to Kayla for that. But you can get those. They're live now on the Restless store. They're limited time, and so we're not going to have them forever. They're not going to always be available. Maybe through the end of the year and Christmas. I'm not sure yet, but it won't go past the end of the year.
Right.
So if you want these shirts, this is the time to go and snag one at therestlesspodcast.com.
Because the YRR in the end was just the things we bought along the way to try and be reformed.
We're just trying to live into it.
More. Pastor Michael can, in the chat, he will throw into our chat a link to the t-shirt. So that'd be great for us. And so why are we calling this the Reformation IRL? So here's what we realized. Pastor Michael and I sat down in a pizza restaurant more than 4 years ago, realizing there were so many of us that were exposed to expository teaching, Calvinism, other doctrines that we celebrate, like the 5 solas, all these great things. And we sat down and realized that there were so many people that did not know what to do next. What are we going to do? And today, Pastor Michael and I are no longer doing a post-mortem on how we all came to understand those things and what the good and bad was. Our conversations now are going to be very similar, but the hope is going to be to focus on what are we going to do next. And I think this could take a lot of different, again, there's a million angles. We're going to do what we want, just like always. But as I was thinking about this, there were just a few things. Like, first, what we all need to recognize, this is what's fascinating. One of the things that I think brought the YR together and broke it apart and has caused the feeling of tension is, do you know what all the people who disagree so much on, like TGC, Tim Keller, thinkers who wildly disagree with them, thinkers like Doug Wilson, all kinds of people. You know what they all seem to agree on? That right now in this country, we are going through the largest religious shift in American history. Here'd be a great guy for us to interview sometime, Ryan Burge. I love his Twitter, where he goes through these stats and population changes about religion. Just a fascinating guy to follow. It'd be really interesting to talk about. And he's even just talked about with people leaving the church. So in the past 30 years, more people have left the church than joined in the first Great Awakening, the second Great Awakening, if that was an awakening, and the Billy Graham Crusades combined.
Wow.
What everyone knows is everything is changing. There's huge change going on. What people don't agree on is, so what do we do about it? What's next? How do we handle it? And so those are some of the conversations we should have. And as we think about the world out there, Pastor Michael, let's go to our smart friends at Jeopardy to just take a quick look at the how much people know about Christianity today. So let's just watch a Jeopardy clip with the new great host Ken Jennings. And Pastor Michael, enjoy.
Jeopardy today concerns.
Oh, I'm not getting sound.
I was getting a little bit through here.
Okay, great.
Roman Catholic Church. Let's take a look at the clue. This day
Where are you,
involving the Holy
sound?
Spirit and
You
the
still hearing it?
apostles is sometimes described as the birthday of the church. 30 seconds. Good luck.
So, Pastor Michael, how do you think they're going to do with this question, by the way?
My guess, not well. my guess is not well.
So,
Sophia Mahmoudis, you're up first with $2,800. What did you write down? What is Palm Sunday? I'm sorry, that's not the right response.
brutal, by the way. That is a
Ken Jennings, like a little bit on the spectrum. Like, nope, nope. Moving on.
what's amazing is like, so I didn't know this, but after well, let me finish the clip and then I'll tell you what I learned about Jeopardy. So this is and by the way, this is Final Jeopardy. So this is the tough final question here.
You wagered 206, leaving you
That's
with
crazy. This is the big
2,594.
question.
Will Wallace, hard to beat today with that 10,800.
It is
What
hard.
was his response in final?
He would know.
What is All Saints Day?
Oh.
No, the Holy Spirit visited the apostles on Pentecost. So that's kind of day one of the church, Pentecost. What did you wager, Will? 800, leaving you with an even 10,000 today. You're now a two-day champion, $28,799. Great game.
So Pastor Michael, I learned about Jeopardy, by the way, that these are like the trivia people. And the one kind of trivia that they can't do is apparently Christianity and then sports related trivia, which I have no idea why, but they can't do it. And so
Not allowed to, or
no, they're just like the contestants are so bad at it.
well, like sports, obviously, like it's nerds, right?
Yep.
And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I could not do sports trivia, right? I'm not going to be able to help with that kind of stuff. So that's not a rip on anybody watching this live stream, but I wouldn't know that stuff. But that is wild because, like you pointed out, that was Final Jeopardy.
Yep.
That's supposed to be one of the hardest questions of the night, and it was basically what is Pentecost? Like that's crazy.
It is.
That's crazy that nobody knew.
Yeah. But Pastor Michael, so obviously there's not a lot of knowledge out there about Christianity, but maybe all this talk of Reformation and needing the Reformation to continue, maybe I'm overblowing it. You know, I don't ever want to oversell things or, be too dramatic. But Pastor Michael, the other day, I saw a service in commemoration at a very large SBC church commemorating the holiday coming this week. I just thought we should watch how they chose to commemorate the upcoming holiday, and we can decide how much of a reformation may or may not be needed. So, here we go. This is on a Sunday, Michael.
No, it's not.
Sunday
Matt.
morning.
It can't be.
So that is without a doubt the worst thing I've ever seen in my entire life. By the way, so Pastor Michael, here's the question: you're a person. You're just a guy going to a mega church. You're just a normie dude. Look it up. What service am I getting to? All right, the 10:30.
All right, let's go.
You walking to that? What are you thinking? Like, what is anyone in that room thinking?
Man, I don't know. I assume honestly that like a guy like me, not with just like not a pastor, not a Christian, not anything, just like, hey, I better, maybe I should start going to church. Like,
yeah,
people have been telling me I better go check it out. My assumption is a guy walks into that and he walks right back out and does not go back.
I mean, I would walk out. Like it was unreal.
Like, what is this? What? Like, where am I? What's going on?
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. But
now here's what's even more unbelievable, Matt. Think about how many churches are not quite that size. They don't quite have that budget, but they dream of the day.
I know
they could have dancers like Billie Eilish. I know there are churches in my area that I know they're just dreaming of the day when they could perform and dance to Billie Eilish on a Sunday. They're like, then we would really reach people.
Yeah. And that's like, man, if there's ever like a Ichabod, the Lord here has departed. It is the moment they're like, oh yeah, Halloween's coming up. Let's do this.
The glory has departed.
And so, but Pastor Michael, so obviously some things in evangelical Protestantism, they can look bleak. And so we know lots of young men are like, I'm looking for the tried and true church of the past that stands with the apostles and martyrs. And so I thought we would just take a quick look at how things were going over in Rome. And so just a quick check over in Rome.
Check in on Reformation Day.
Here on Rome. And so this week, the Vatican has unveiled the official mascot of the Holy Year of our Lord 2025, which is Lucy or Luce, Italian for light. The Archbishop Fisichella says the mascot was inspired by the church's desire to live even within pop culture, so beloved by our youth. And so, in case you're not seeing, this is a video show, but if you're an audio listener, this is a little anime girl. Because I guess there's lots of trad Catholics who have anime anons that they're really.
It does look like kind of almost like a Funko Pop type of thing.
Yeah, basically.
Right? Like it's basically a Funko Pop little anime girl
right.
with what is in her hand? It's like
some kind of staff.
Like staff, but it's got like a fork on it.
Yeah.
A bit. It's got a little crucifix.
Yeah.
And it's just this like kind of cutesy little thing.
And so there were some people saying that there were two, right? One person called this Funko Pops for Catholics. And I saw a great tweet about this. The person said, like, imagine having left Protestantism because you were like, we've turned Christianity into Veggie Tales and just degraded it and turned it into entertainment just to wake up and be like, hey, we're going to put this on everything. This is who we are.
It's like we're going to do a little anime girl thing.
Yep.
Because the church wants to live even within the pop culture so beloved by our youth. It's always for the kids, but it's always like we're losing the youth. We're losing the youth. And it's always these kinds of people like that are like, I know I know how to get them.
I
We
do.
should dance to Billie Eilish. Like, if there's anything that will bring more young men into the church,
Right.
it's this.
So, Pastor Michael, though, it is Reformation Day, and we can't leave this beautiful image that the Roman Catholic Church is without just seeing how she is celebrating Reformation Day. Well, she's celebrating it with Martin Luther, and he has handed her a Bible, and Lucy, she can read the Bible. She's a Protestant now, so we can all just celebrate Reformation Day.
It would be great if they made like an AI. I mean, I'm sure the Catholics have started with it. I mean, they did, right? They had like an AI,
Oh yeah,
priest or something like that. But I'm sure they'll make an AI of this, and then eventually she will, read the scriptures and begin to share them with others. That's a great photo. That's a great picture.
So,
by the way, Lutheran Satire, Hans Fien did a great video with this.
yeah, you were
and I won't ruin it, but it's pretty solid.
Pastor Michael, what is it going to take for us to get Hans? So we have 2 interviews I now want to do in this coming year. Hans, I want to do Ryan Burge. But Pastor Michael, let's start talking about like when I talk about taking the Reformation from this thing, it was for most of us a very online thing. We will talk about its conferences in next week's episode here on Restless, and their place. But what for you, what do you think about when we start talking about making the Reformation something that is in real life?
Yeah, so I think first of all, I think something that really well encapsulates what it would actually look like is the picture that we use for this live stream. Shout out to Tony, who just put the heads of some of the reformers and Charles Spurgeon, kind of the some of the well-known YRR guys from the past that we've got little animated pictures of, and he put them on this picture with the guys from King of the Hill. And so they're just sitting out, like standing in the yard, hanging out. And there's something, yeah, there we go. Like this, I feel like actually encapsulates it pretty well in a certain way. In the sense that I think that actually the Reformation IRL, the Reformation in real life, is not cutesy, anonymous accounts online. It's not the big conferences. It's not it's not even the well-known Bible teacher that everybody's heard of. It's literally just regular guys, right? It's just regular people. It's IRL Reformation is when the common person gets the scriptures and gets expositional preaching and receives the sacraments, and it's just integrated into the whole of what they do from week to week.
Yeah, this is I think that's a fascinating thing. This brings me to kind of this one big question. So the YRR in general, but again, as these factions have formed, as we watch well-known pastors fall, or pastors where it's like, oh no, this guy, right? The end of the world happened. And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't feel like I'm looking down on anyone who feels bad or like was emotionally attached to Steve Lawson, or all these kinds of names that we've seen along the way, or various people involved with hitmen, anyone like that along the way. But I think that there's something. This is the thing that when you talk about it needing to get involved with ordinary people, is there's a sense where those things are a big deal, but also I think sometimes probably because of the very online that I can find right now on this live stream, I can find a podcast like Restless. I can find people who are like dialed in and we'll talk about the real David Platt stuff in a second here, but who are all dialed into this, and we're like, well, this is a big deal. Everyone's talking about it. I think we forget how truly little, like how it doesn't really matter. Like, we aren't a big deal. These actually aren't that big of names, right? The hilarious thing when we were like, let's go back and look at the other ideas changing the world Time magazine picked with Calvinism, and we hadn't heard of any of them.
Yeah.
Right? And
Right.
so it's this weird position where we spend our time, and I don't know what to do, because I literally am doing this on a show. I'm caring a ton about like what this like Tim Keller acolyte said about this, other dude, like, and that this is somehow a big deal. And it's just so far removed from like every day. Like, if you want to know someone that may end up actually, for better or worse, hurting Protestant Christianity, it's going to be like Russell Brand. Like, it's like the scale at which things are happening out in the world is so different.
Yeah.
And it just makes me wonder, like, yes, we do need to actually get involved and get to ordinary people.
Mm-hmm. And there's nothing flashy about it, right? That's the thing, is that there's nothing really marketable about it, right? I can, like, if I just showed you me meeting with just regular folks this week, right? Folks in a nursing home or something like that, you wouldn't be like, man, that's really cool. Man,
Right.
he's really doing it, right? Like, look at the kingdom go forward. You wouldn't even think about it like that, because it's actually just real life, and real life is both far more, glorious and interesting and fun than anything that you're going to find in a kind of manicured image online. But it's also a lot less flashy. It is, it isn't as political in nature, where everything's kind of putting on a face a little bit. And part of that's, anything that happens online, it's a big conference, it's a big production, it's some kind of material. Even this, like having a podcast or something like that, there is an artificial element to it. It's not just you sitting with people in a real space. There's always going to be some level of artificiality to it. And obviously we strive not to have that on this podcast, but it's inevitable, because we're talking through a screen. We're not with each other, right? I'm literally standing in my basement alone.
Right.
So it's not the same. But that's part of the reality, is that real life is not constantly interesting, fun. Now, I would say it's more interesting and fun, but it's not the constant dopamine hits that you get when you're doing Reformation on Twitter, right? Where you just go from controversy to controversy. Here's my virtue signal here. And we might not call it that. We might think we're fighting for truth, and we're really saying all the right things, and we're taking on the latest, this latest guy in the Reform world that really thinks he's something, but there's nothing better that we have to do than to attack him. And so we better use our time to do that. And so, like, look at us, like, we're really doing it. Aren't we? Like, aren't we amazing for doing this? You don't get that same constant, like, hey, I was in 5 battles today with all these different people. That's not probably going to happen in real life. It'll happen from time to time, but it's not going to happen that much. And if it does, probably you're alone and nobody likes you. Like, that's the reality of it. And so you don't get that dopamine hit all the time. And it's just a much slower and much more organic shift over time. It's not, I went to a conference and everything changed, and now I'm going to plant a church with Acts 29.
Right.
Actually, it's a slow growth over time, as you learn the true virtues of what it means to be a Christian a Christian husband, a Christian father, as you learn what it looks like to shepherd people as they die, or as they are struggling in the faith, or whatever, right? It's just not going to be that glamorous.
Right. I mean, again, let me give one kind of call this way with what you're saying towards pastors, and then one towards people. Again, if you read Luther, if you read later Puritans, they will all talk about pastoral visits as the backbone and the essential act of the Reformed, or as Luther would have called it, the evangelical pastor. That's dead, right? That is just dead. When we talk about desiring to do that at our very young church, people go, wow, that's so like, what a unique brand to be, I'm like, no, that's the, like, we're not performing malpractice.
It's the most basic thing that it's hard to do, by the way. It's hard to do,
yes.
To try to keep up with everything and to keep up with everyone and try to visit with folks and check in with folks. It's very difficult. But I found too, I mean, if I do, there have been times where I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, oh, sorry, I got to get going. I'm visiting so-and-so. Just cause I call them, we're going to check in on them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people in evangelical churches that are like, my pastor has never been in my home. I've never been in his home ever.
I grew up a member of a pretty good church my entire life. A pastor was never in my home, and I was never in a pastor's home.
Yeah. And that's not to say, by the way, I haven't visited everybody's home in our church. I wish I had, although whole church is invited over to my house tomorrow to celebrate All Saints Day and the Reformation and the time of harvest.
But yeah, I mean, again, right? So this is what looks like a really ordinary thing, but would actually be one of the most reformational things we could possibly be engaged in. As far as it goes for like an individual Christian, when I think about this, what is one of the most derelict parts of the church? Again, other than like the video we watched from the SBC church, which obviously
it's crazy. Remember how it was this big thing, like, man, we're fighting the SBC to keep out those churches that are like, they have some female pastor, and so we're kicking out Rick Warren and all this. And it was like, man, what a win for conservatives. We did it.
We can go back to the piece where this
yeah, but it was a male pastor that told us to do this.
Yeah. But so we're celebrating faith, right? That we are saved by faith alone. Now, the Westminster and everything else says it is no dead faith. What does Calvin say is the chief exercise of faith in the Christian life? And it is something that I would venture, is almost banished out of most church services because it is not particularly enjoyable to listen to. It is prayer. Calvin says the chief exercise of faith is prayer. The barometer of your faith is prayer. The way you see prayers answered or not. The way this is where it's like, this is, if you believe in God's providential hand over the world, do you want to see it? You have to pray. You have to thank him for things. You have to recognize, right? This is how faithless most of us are.
Yeah.
We pray for something, it happens, and we go, it probably would have happened anyway. Think about that. That is like, and I know I'm not the only person who's had that thought. That is how faithless we are, that we literally can pray, say amen, the next day it happens, and go, well, I don't want to get crazy. That probably would have happened.
Oh man. This hits so hard. Literally just this week, there was a day when I realized it had been a while since I'd spent, I try to spend a prolonged time in prayer throughout the week, pray for the church, pray for each individual in the church, right? All of our members and things like that. And I had not done it. And I had a lot of stuff on a to-do list. And I literally had this moment where I wouldn't have articulated it this way, but I realized I don't want to pray. And I stopped everything and I just went into our sanctuary and I sat and I prayed through Psalm 24 which hit really hard when I didn't want to pray
Mm.
because of my hardness of my heart.
Right.
But no, it's true, man. Like, it's true. It really is the centerpiece of the faith worked out.
Yeah. So let's I want to react to a guy who gave us a recommendation. I'm going to show a couple of his tweets. It is a yay, nay, or nuance. By the way, I told him, I was like, I mean, we'll do it, but you kind of know where we're going to go with it. And so I'm going to read his contextual tweets.
Hey, we should say anybody, who we use their material, we're
That's right.
sending them some stuff, right? And honestly, anybody who sent us anything, if I get your mailing address, or I know, for instance, Amanda, I saw you in the chat, so I think you're watching. I've got a bin full of stuff you can pick some stuff from sometime. She's at our church, so I know some folks from our church sent some stuff, and I'll make sure they get something. But and she sent us like 18 memes. so we got a lot from her. But I've got a ton of stuff. I've got these keychains and things that I could send to people with some Restless stuff. I've got all kinds of good classic stickers and super fun stuff. So anything that we use, we just need people's addresses. And if we forget to reach out to you and get your address after using something from you, you need to just reach out to us and send us your address. If you send me your address, I'll send you something.
That's right. So this is actually the right answer. We are not going to proactively find anyone to send it.
We're really bad at that. Okay, everybody.
But if you submit something, if you send us a yay, nay, or nuance in the chat, or you are a scoundrel and you don't feel bad, you can simply send our Twitter by private message or our email an answer, and Pastor Michael will send you something. What a benefit to be on the live stream to learn that. We are going to give away one of these t-shirts to someone who joins the Patreon and someone who is a patron. So if you are not a patron and you are one of the few people watching this live stream as it goes out, you could be the first person. We'll take a winner. So let me share one tweet we did get about this. Here we go. So Pastor Michael, the yay, nay, or nuance is this. And again, like I said, I think we kind of know where we're going to go here, but it is hiring a celebrity pastor, yay, nay, or nuance. Now,
I love that you already said, you were like, I mean, you know what we're going to say.
Yeah, exactly. So we will read his two tweets of context of why he thought there could be an interesting conversation to it. What connects McLean Bible Church, Virginia, and Trinity Bible Church, Texas? We have the opportunity to go out and get a celebrity pastor. His, of course, answer is don't do this. Find a man who loves the Lord, knows the Bible, bleeds for God's people, and obviously someone content to be a nobody. Further aspect of this is that churches hiring these big name guys with the understanding that he only preaches is exempt from all other pastoral duties. Hard to have a pastor if he's not acting like this. By the way, I enjoy the show. So Pastor Michael, hiring a celebrity pastor.
Send us your address.
That's right.
Send us your address,
Dirk, we're here for you. So Pastor Michael, when it comes to hiring a celebrity pastor, what do you think about this? Are you going to be a yay, nay, or a nuance to this?
Well, here I have to ask a follow-up question.
Sure.
What if you have a podcast that that has like, over 300,000 downloads? Does that make you cool? It's just a joke, people. It really is. It literally doesn't. That's why I think it's funny to say that. No, I mean, I would say no, you don't. Now, here's the thing. There are people
I can't wait for
that become like celebrities, quote unquote.
Right.
It's not like they're trying to do it. It's not something that they actively do, right? There are well-known preachers who have also been good pastors. And so that's the only place that I would want to add a little clarification of what we mean. I think on a general level, I'm fine saying like, no, you don't. You don't get that kind of person. You know, if you have somebody who says, I want to just preach and I'm not doing anything else. Well, that's not a pastor. You know, I mean, preaching's obviously important. I'm all for preaching. That's where my greatest desire to spend my time is. I mean, I love to preach. I see that as central to my calling. And yet, if that's all you do, you haven't really started to do the work of a pastor. And so you're not calling a pastor if you're calling somebody simply to preach on a Sunday.
So I am obviously a nay, because the spirit of what he's asking is, if we're a church, should we try and find the guy who's a big conference speaker?
That's
obviously,
right.
I'm a nay to that.
No.
I want to dive into two slightly more interesting questions. So, Pastor Michael, what do you do? Like, because here would be and this is kind of what John Piper basically did. You gain notoriety. Does that basically mean you can never, ever, like, you just never move again? Like, it's like, because you can't get hired. Again, it may be a blessing to me that I don't have to think through that, and probably I almost certainly never will. But I don't know, what do you do with that? What do you do if I just, because it's something that's pretty removed from my own ministry and circumstance, like, what do you do if a church wants to offer you more responsibility for some reason? I don't know what to do with that, because at some level, if a church, even at a very small scale, if a church is reaching out to you, they are doing it because of something about your ministry they want.
Yep, they've seen something.
Hopefully it's not just the, like, well, if we get that name, boom, we have this, right? Like, hopefully it's not something like that. Like, it's not that situation. I don't know how to make that kind of a decision.
Yeah. Hey, and by the way, shout out to somebody like a Piper who, you know, he never took a massive, massive salary or something like that. And and there does come a point where I think you're just forced to be in a position where maybe it's not ideal for a pastor, but you might be, you know, what if you all of a sudden, you know, if in the next, 2 years at our church, we had 300 people from the area start attending. We can't handle that, right? Like, we can't deal with that. That would be crushing in a certain way, right? It'd be so many, it would be overwhelming. It wouldn't, like, the church doesn't fit that many people. And we don't currently have guys ready to send out to plant another church, right? Like, we aren't currently in that position. And so we would have to find a way to, like, try to faithfully shepherd those people. And I don't know what that looks like then. If you're just like, you've got to have a bunch of services and just preach extra. And if a pastor's preaching a lot of times throughout the week, because you've got so many people you're trying to teach and lead, and because the pulpit is the center of the ministry, I understand how you could get to a point where it's like, maybe he has to devote more of his time to that versus, doing a lot more visitation or things like that, or counseling. And that makes sense. So it's not that it can't happen, but when that's the desire, when it's like our goal is based on somebody's name,
right?
We're going to blow this place out.
Right. That's not
healthy.
So again, now here's the other interesting thing. Obviously, I think there is a fundamental, I think, again, the megachurch experiment has been ran and it was a failure. Let's just, and again, that's not even
we can all agree.
It's not and I'm not even speaking of large churches. Those have existed at least since Spurgeon. I'm talking about that we know there was, right, a missiologist who said we will reach the country by having so many of these churches of over 2,000. I'm saying that a concerted effort, a model, a big box model where we have Billie Eilish dancers, they are the bad guys. It was a bad idea. But I do think, again, in any very large congregation, when it's like all he is there to do is preach, when I speak at our church and I talk to, let's say, 60 to 80 people, whatever it is, that is again, if you are a pastor and believe you are speaking with the authority of God from the pulpit, it would be foolish to underestimate that. You should take it seriously. You should put work in. If you are in that role and it's 1,000 people, it does seem like there is some kind of responsibility that comes with that.
Mhm.
And even if you're like, well, talking to 60 people is just as important as talking to 1,000 people. I'm fine with that. I'm happy with that. The problem is I also, after church, in 3 weeks, I can at least have talked to every person I spoke to.
Yep.
Now, it may not be the best connection that's ever existed,
Right.
but I know who they are. I know if they don't come for quite a while. You can't, like, the only access you have to a person is that 40 minutes when you're up in front of people, which again, no wonder they're afraid that the social media and news are discipling their people, because you've never discipled them. No wonder they say weird things about race and politics and give strange marriage advice from the pulpit, because while it might be appropriate for me in a personal, someone in my church says, hey, who are you voting for? I feel weird. Can we talk? That might be a 100% great conversation. It might be helpful to them. It obviously has nothing to do with what I'm preaching, if I'm preaching the word, but they have to shoehorn this stuff in because it's their only chance.
It's it. Yeah, this is it. This is my time in front of you, with you. Yeah, I mean, that sounds overwhelming, by the way.
I think so.
Incredibly overwhelming. I did, but again, I'm not just trying to boost Bethlehem Baptist up in the cities, but and by the way, I call it the cities because where we live, it's the Twin Cities, like it's the cities or the cities, like it's not from here. That's what it is. I know, depending where you are in the country, it's like what's he even talking about? So I'm talking about Minneapolis, St. Paul when I say the cities. I'm just a Western Wisconsin boy. I remember going to a service there once where one of the pastors mentioned that they were having an open house over the course of like a weekend. And at any point, given certain periods of time throughout the course of like 3 or 4 days, everyone from the church was invited to stop through, like come over to our house, stop through, say hi, we're going to have some food with, like, just almost to like try to do something where, hey, we still have some kind of real connection. That's not just, it's not just, you see each other on a Sunday, right. It's this big thing, and then you're gone. And so there's things you can try to do. I just don't know how you do it. Like, practically speaking, I think it's really difficult, which is why what ends up happening in a lot of big churches is if they have some kind of small group, anything, of course, somebody's small group basically becomes what their church is, right? That is their church. And then sometimes that spins out of control. It becomes a house church. But remember, everybody, friends don't let friends start house churches.
Everybody, you're going to have to get used to us starting to say more and more things like this. We're actually now talking about what's next, because again, part of the ending failure of the YRR was, oh man, I've got all my secret Calvin books at home, and I'm just going to go to my same big box Billie Eilish dancing church. And then in my small group be like, yeah, but what about these wild ideas? And everyone's gonna be like, yeah, that's great. No, it's time to start living out our convictions. And speaking of living out convictions, Pastor Michael, you might be unsurprised to know we have been asked about a seeming up-and-comer in the ministry world these days. Let me find our... Here we go. Oh, it's just you. That'll be fine for...
that's a weird thing to do on a live stream, to just put it as me.
Here, I'll try. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. An up-and-comer. That's right.
Pastor Mark Driscoll. This is Pastor Mark Driscoll with the 45 hopeful 47, the American garbage man himself, Donald Trump. And here's what Mark Driscoll said. It was a historic day. President Trump will be adding a faith office in the White House that directly reports to him to protect and preserve the church. And he's retweeting a tweet by Eric Metaxas. I don't know. Is Eric Metaxas in this photo? I don't think
so, but he says he was there, so he probably took the photo.
Oh,
right?
Sure. Driscoll is there.
Oh no, is there? That's him over
him.
Trump's right shoulder. Isn't that Eric Metaxas?
Oh, is that him in the back there?
I think it looks kind of like him. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, obviously Eric Metaxas, put it all on the line.
I don't see a shofar.
So
speaking of, by the way, can I just say we have shout out to Kayla. So I have a bunch of these stickers to send out to people if they want, and we have it's stuff that we've kind of ideas and stuff we've worked through. And now I'm not finding it. I'm gonna find it, but she made this great. Yes, I want everybody to see this. Make me big again.
All right,
make me big again because I'm on this now. All right, so Kayla made this great sticker that maybe we'll have in the store someday. It's just a concept. It's who needs healthcare when you have a shofar? Because we said that there was an episode once where we talked about Eric Metaxas blowing the shofar at the Stop the Steal rally or whatever. And then we got down this rabbit hole. YouTube started to feed me all these videos of 4.5 hours of shofar to heal you.
Oh, yeah.
And it sounds exactly like what you think. It's not pretty. It just sounds like somebody blowing through a ram's horn. And so I think one of us said, who needs healthcare when you have a shofar? And so Kayla had some of those stickers made up, which is hilarious. And so they're limited edition. I have 2 of them, I think, in my possession. And so maybe we can send one to somebody.
I mean, it's so great that, I know you can't order this on, you can't get it through the exchange. It's just so great that you can get it for free on YouTube. 6 hours of amazing shofar for healing.
6 hours?
Sound of victory. Oh my goodness.
We should have a Restless challenge where we see who can listen to the most shofar.
So, but back to Christian nationalism. We're gonna go back to our Mr. Mark Driscoll with Eric Metaxas. I still have the shofar in my studio that I need to stop because it might be healing, but I can't think. It gets in your brain. Maybe that's where it neurologically begins to change you. So Eric Metaxas says, today I had the privilege of being with President Trump and a number of Christian leaders at the Faith Advisory Board meeting in Atlanta. Join me in praying for this nation. So Driscoll had, some people, Pastor Michael, insert the meme here. Is this a Christian nationalism? So someone asks, Mark Driscoll cozying up to power, which this, of course, is completely right. That's it's always been about it for him. The church has been doing fine for the past 2,000 years without a faith office to protect and preserve it. And
how come nobody has a good idea ever, right? How come everybody that responds to somebody like Driscoll is just worse? They're worse than him.
So, yes. So Driscoll answers back, yes, the current state of the church can only be described as healthy and flourishing. This guy responds, the current iteration of the evangelical church in America isn't healthy and flourishing. I agree. However, it's not the state's role to protect and preserve the church. Our Savior, Jesus Christ, is more than capable of that. If Samson was running for president, what would Christians say about him, or David or Paul? And so obviously people had a lot of thoughts about this. So here's the question, Pastor Michael. What do we think about what Driscoll is talking about here? Is here kind of we are going to, by the way, we will be doing 2 Driscoll reacts here on the main channel, because one is, what is Calvinism really? 10 minutes he explains what Calvinism is, and we got to listen. I mean, obviously, the man who exposed me to Calvinism. I need to know. I need to know.
We have a whole podcast about Calvinism, and we're both pastors in a Reformed denomination, in large part because of this man.
So 15 years later, it's time to hear him settle the issue. And then, depending on how this election goes, we may be reacting to his video called "Is Donald Trump a Christian?" What I've concluded after talking to him, because
I love that he's already putting out content like me and my buddy.
I know
me and my buddy Trump.
Genius. It's
Which
genius.
I also do. There's, for the record, I also do that. I also, whenever I'm close to power, then brag about it to everybody.
Pastor Michael is close to power in certain ways. Is what you need to hear. So, but Pastor Michael, what do we make of this idea of Driscoll attempting to be involved with it? What are your thoughts about this? Because obviously, even lots of people in our camp are like, "Oh,
that's crazy."
This is not good. And or of course, once Driscoll put his name on it, it became controversial.
Yeah. Let me just say that as long as my elders were cool with it, if I was asked to be on some kind of faith advisory board or something with the president of the United States, I'd do it. I wouldn't even flinch about that, right? And I wouldn't care. Like, it could be now. It could be with Joe Biden, right? Like, if I had the opportunity to speak to the president and try in any way to influence things for the good of the church in America, so that there would be policy that would benefit the church, of course. Of course. That sounds great. Now, will that happen? I don't know. I mean, there has been a lot coming out from this, from those with Trump. I don't know if Trump has said anything, but there are a lot of guys around Trump who have said, hey, how come we're not, helping to protect Christians in other places or even here? Like, how come they're being scrutinized more and more? We really should, protect and preserve them more. That's a good thing, by the way. That's a good thing. It's actually one of the duties that the civil magistrate has before God.
Oh, Pastor Michael, it sounds like you are quoting the Westminster Confession of Faith. By the way,
thank you for pulling it up. I was trying to pull it up slowly, but I wasn't able to grab it quick enough.
And by the way, for everyone, nobody needs to get worried, though Pastor Michael may be close to power, as we've learned. This is the American revision, so nobody needs to get worried.
That's right.
When we talk about the civil magistrates, we say the civil magistrates may not assume to themselves the administration of the word or sacraments or the power of the keys of the kingdom. They are, right, the king, the president. They are not the heads of the church. They do not make decisions, or at least interfere with matters of faith. Perhaps if you're telling people under what conditions the church can meet, you might be violating that matter of the confession. But moving on, yet as nursing fathers, it is the duty of the civil magistrate to protect the church of our common Lord, which I believe is basically the exact word Driscoll used.
It is.
Without giving preference to any denomination of Christians. And no worries here, friends. Donald Trump does not know anything about any denomination of Christians of the rest, in such manner that ecclesial persons or whatever shall enjoy full, free, unquestioned liberty of discharging every part of their sacred functions without violence or danger. And as Jesus Christ has appointed a regular government and the discipline in his church, no law of any commonwealth shall interfere with, let, or hinder the due exercise thereof among the voluntary members of any denomination of Christians, according to their own profession and belief. It is the duty of civil magistrates to protect the person and good name of all their people. Again, here is a thing
Mark Driscoll, the Westminsterian.
Dude, well, Pastor Michael, here is a bit of the concern with the Reformed world. The Reformation occurred because a monk left his monastery and said, I am going to begin a debate. And we call the reformers we are celebrating today the magisterial reformers, as in they were reforming the magistrates and were involved with the magistrates. And we'll come back to potentially that relationship if we're on this conversation. It's interesting. I heard someone describe this and I was like, oh man, that hurts because it feels a little bit too like what I'm worried a lot of the Reformed world is like. It's a little bit of the opposite of your go out to the ordinary people. It is, what are we going to do in our country? Are we just going to basically become suburban monks? We are basically going to say, we are going to basically hole away in monasteries, and whatever happens out there, we aren't going to be very concerned with it. Unfortunately, we are monks in places where we can still order pizzas, and we have had decent enough pay and jobs, and so we can kind of weather whatever does actually go on out there.
That's right.
And if we do that, people are still going to be looking for anything.
Right.
And people like Mark Driscoll are going to be more than happy to say we need to protect and preserve the common church of our Lord.
Yes. Yeah, good on him. What you're saying is the Reformation IRL, right? If we really want to take the truths of the Reformation to everyone, to the world, guess what? That includes sheriffs. It includes mayors and those who sit on, the city council, and it involves the administrators of public schools, and it involves state officials and even federal officials, depending on where you are, senators and Congress people, and maybe even presidents. And you have to know, what are you going to do when that person comes into your office and is like, help me know, how do I take these truths and apply them in my vocation? Actually, that matters, right? Like that is a vocation from the Lord, and the Lord has spoken to it. Now, he maybe hasn't spoken to it in the way that a lot of the Lucy Anon accounts want him to have spoken about them, but he has spoken to them in his word. And so there are ways that taking the truths of Scripture into those places and those vocations also matters.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just be content with this. If we're just honest, like, part of the reason the Reformation isn't maybe making its way into a lot of real life is that many people who hold to the truths that were brought back to the people in the Reformation are really content with, well, we want a handful of engineers and some scholars, we want some theologians and seminary professors, and that's pretty good. As long as we have a handful of white collar guys, and I think we'll be okay. But the reality is that these are the truths for the people,
Right.
all the people, and so they need to go to all of the people. The Scriptures meant to be proclaimed to everyone.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that we have to begin to consider is, and again, this is the same. I am literally in an armchair as I'm about to armchair quarterback and condemn this. We have to start asking this very reasonable question: could we actually run anything? Right? Of all the people with all the brilliant ideas for the Reformed Church, for TGC, for obviously at this point the Office of Protection and Preserving, right, the church. Like, could you actually run any of these things? Because being right is good, but it actually takes skill and ability to actually lead and administer and minister in these kinds of places. And announcing the criticisms the way that we often do are not anywhere close, right, to what is actually going to what it's going to take. And it just is is a challenge, right? Pastor Michael and I, we often talk about let's even go again, let's take it to the most micro level. The learning curve it takes to be involved in a presbytery, right? It is a learning curve in how do I actually engage with the church beyond just my local gathering.
Yeah.
And don't leave early. As everybody, I did last time. But in training elders to want to be engaged, and then how to, so they don't just feel like they sit there all day. And then even beyond that, how to engage at the general assembly. Like, can you actually meaningfully join in, right? These things actually take work. They're not easy, right? And if we're not willing to actually do that work, we aren't going to do it, right? The reformers were very capable in these ways. They knew what they were doing, right? Again, Luther loves the undersell. Oh, I just opened the Bible and all of Europe was lit on fire. The man doth protest too little. But yeah, I just think it's such an important thing for us to be thinking about is we're going to have to actually build and actually be responsible and actually be trustworthy with any of these things. And I think most of us want, like, replace the big names, boom.
Yeah, we get the right guys in there, then we'll be fine. God has made a world where he gives responsibility to those who are willing to take it. And that means even the people that you don't want on the faith advisory council to the president, like a Mark Driscoll, right? Like the people that you don't like and you don't want there, that are bringing their shofars and they're bringing their anointing oil and they're doing all kinds of stuff like that. Well, guess what? Like they're willing to take it, right? They're willing to take it on. And they've done that in some form. Maybe it's a form we don't like. Maybe it's not in the healthiest form. But one of the things I'd say that a lot of these people have done is they've actually gone to the people. Here's the thing. We talk about how, the church shouldn't be political. And that's true, by the way. I like it. That's right. As far as like partisan politics, like, all the people that have been saying all week, pastors, you better be ready to preach a sermon this Sunday on how everyone in your church needs to get out and vote. Like, that's really bad stuff, right? That you shouldn't be putting burdens on people that are not things that Scripture actually commands. You shouldn't be preaching things that Scripture itself does not preach and teach. Could you do something principially from Scripture as far as your duty as a citizen? Sure, like there are things you can do, but to make some kind of to make the church a partisan political deal is a really dangerous and bad thing to do. Right. However, there are many, many, many people, regular people, the people in the pews, the people outside of the pews, right? The people that you're trying to reach with the truth, they're actively engaged in these things. They're watching the news every night. They're following their favorite, political commentators. And as much as we say a lot of people aren't political, that is true, right? Not everybody votes. All of that is true.
Very bad at politics.
What's that?
Very bad, right? This is the other thing. Many people are bad at politics.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I'm saying is, if you want to go and speak to people, you're going to be speaking to people that are politically active one way or the other, right? Or people who politics, government really affects them a lot, and they get really worked up about it. And for a lot of them, they hold it as some of their central values because they don't have faith, because they don't have something that's any deeper than that. And because it really matters, right? It really matters because it has to do with our common life together. It has to do with how we are to live and the kinds of ways we're supposed to treat each other and things like that. It really does matter a lot for all of us. And we live in a time when our government has gotten involved in almost everything, right? It dictates things about almost everything that I can do. And so it makes most things political. And there's a lot of guys that still want to say, well, I don't want to speak to any of that. I don't really like talking to people that are really into their politics. Well, that's the people.
Right.
You know, it might not be all the people, but that's a lot of the people. And so I've noticed it a lot the last few weeks is so many Christians, Reformed evangelical Christians, have this incredibly like arrogant position. And I'm not talking about even like the Tim Keller third way, but really we're Democrats kind of stuff, right? I'm talking about even the like more conservative Reform guys are like, well, I'm higher and much more like I'm far above all of these silly people that are really concerned with the coming election.
Right.
That's the people, right? And actually, a lot of times they probably have more sense than you do. I've learned that more and more. The longer I live, the more I think, you know, my just blue collar uncles have a lot more sense than almost anybody that trained me in seminary, right? Like they have a lot more sense about them than a lot of these people. But that kind of arrogance, I think what it does is it makes you somebody that could never disciple the person that comes into your church with a mega hat, right? Because you automatically you look down on that person. You automatically think, well, I don't really care for that kind of person. I would much rather have the intellectual, right? I'd much rather have the kind of person who's not really interested in the current politics of the day. Well, that's not the people, right? Like that's not real people, or at least it's very few real people. It's not to say that those other people don't matter. It's to say that there are entire groups of our country who nobody speaks to, except, by the way, guys like Mark Driscoll.
Yep.
Guys like Eric Metaxas with his shofar.
Right. So I think part of the thing we have to come to terms with is, who did Calvin dedicate the Institutes of the Christian Religion to? The French king.
That's right.
He wrote a book of theology, but he understood how to make theology public truth, because there are, of course, two senses where the church should not be political, right? Politics is basically the art of, like accomplishing the common good for people. So obviously I don't have expertise, right? Again, we always think of politics on the largest scale, on the like actual scale that it matters around me, the EMT, the EMS, the way the sheriffs function. I have zero expertise in ordering that, and obviously shouldn't try to, but there is a sense where we obviously should speak to the common good. The other major issue of at times when people speak, the reason people can be hesitant to speak to politics, but I don't think it's necessarily correct, is because we live in a very secular age. Because above the earth there's only sky, there is no God. Like, people do not understand there actually can be anything more important than what happens in the social realm,
right?
And so therefore, again, there is not even like, when I use idolatry, I don't mean like people who want their kids to not grow up in a horrible place are idolaters, but it's an idolatry in that they literally have no God to go to. And so the idea that my soul and other things can matter, and so while these things matter, they can matter always relatively, is a completely unknown idea. And so, yes, of course, actually what you should be telling people is, oh, I completely understand your concerns. They matter a ton. Have you considered your soul? And two, do you know why those things actually are?
That's right.
And if we don't, there will be people who will do it. And as I've called back to Calvin a few times, this is the other thing we actually have to do to take the Reformation IRL, is we actually have to start reading. We have to start actually comprehending what they were doing on a wider scale. like working through the institutes or just, other things like this. Because what is essential is, while I do believe the evangelical church is in desperate need of reform, we've talked about that tonight. The glorious thing we celebrate on Reformation Day is this. And if you would like to put, by the way, as I go, sorry, because I'm doing this in a live stream way, before I make this point, if you would like to put some yay, nay, or nuances in the chat, in the live stream chat, we are willing to take a couple before we leave. So I'll say this, Pastor Michael, react to this. We'll take any comments, arguments, or questions and then head out. But the reason we celebrate it is because what happened in the Reformation was not we've got a good first step. The church was dead, everything was gone, and now we're kind of on our way again. What it was the reason they put all of these things in confessions, the reason the Westminster Confession is so valuable, the reason the other confessional documents are valuable, Luther's catechisms continue to be valuable. The other many confessions continue to have a role, and would be foolish for us to say it's time to write new confessions. The reason those things were put in documents is the answer was the issues that had obscured the gospel, which, as Luther said, was the true treasure of the church, and the things that the church had engaged in that were corrupt. Those things had been addressed. And so now it wasn't that the church had to be completely started over. They had come to the definite end. This was a great work, a hard work, a work of revival, a work of God's Spirit, a work of the Word of God being released again. But it was a work that they actually finished, right? That was actually succinctly done. The issues in the church that existed in that day were handled. And so we do look back, not because we go that in many ways, and I will die on this hill, they should be treated as like the church fathers were, not right on everything, but in the church fathers who were able to lay such fundamental foundation,
yes,
by God's Spirit, the reformers were able to recover and explicate those truths in clarity when it was a time of great confusion. And that's why we look back. That's why it's still useful for us today.
It's great. I love it. I'm all for it. I'm in.
That's great. I'm in too. I'm in. So, Pastor Michael, before we leave here, I will say we have been asked about the real David Platt documentary. The only thing I'll say about it tonight is welcome to the new world where post Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, everything's this now. You're going to get this with everything now.
It's true.
But we've been asked about it enough. Pastor Michael, you can join our Patreon for as little as $3 a month. I don't know. We are pretty close. Maybe we might be 10 low-level patrons away, or people upgrading their patrons from getting to the $300 level. As soon as our Patreon hits $300, we will do on the public feed, and maybe we need to do video because they're using video clips. We will review the 2-part documentary. Will we do it in 2 episodes? Maybe. But we will review the real David Platt in the way we reviewed the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. What do we learn? What do we think the creator wants you to take away?
Yep.
What criticisms do we have? And in fact, I would be willing to bet, though I don't know how interesting the conversation would be, I would be willing to bet that creator, unlike one Mike Cosper, would be willing to come and talk to us after we do the review. So get us to $300 a month on Patreon or 500 subscribers on YouTube, which is going to be it's actually going to take a lot longer. But we're both looking forward to those things. We will be doing more live streams again. I mean, I didn't get this nice podcast arm for this one night.
That's right.
We've decided our next live stream will kick off the 12 days of Restless. So that is just going to be all random, all fun, all great stuff. But we're back to weekly episodes with Restless. And we will work on turning it slowly into a full-time video show, right? I mean,
yep, that's the goal. The goal is to do video all the time. It's just hard with the time constraints that we have, but we're working on it, everybody. We're working on it. And now it's season 2. Who knows what we could end up doing? I mean, we're starting. Think about where we started at first.
That's right.
We were on different continents.
Yep.
We were just using, probably just regular headphones with a little headphone mic with just cheap $10 headphones. And then, slowly over time, we've been able to work it up into what we've got now. And so it's great. We're starting from a much better place, I think. We've learned a lot. We've had a lot of fun. We made these awesome t-shirts.
Right.
Hey, I went through the YRR and all I got was this stupid t-shirt. But it's not a stupid t-shirt. You can get either this one that I have or the one that Matt has. Both of them are available. You can go get those. Again, those are only going to be around for a limited time. They won't be around that much longer. But probably through Christmas or so. But we're celebrating right now, right? We're excited for what everything could become with this. But honestly, we just like doing it. Like we like the process. Matt and I enjoy speaking together, and we just open it up for everybody else to listen to, because we would literally do this anyway.
And by the way, we have Pastor Michael, give people a tease for next week here in season 2. We pre-recorded an episode on why conferences matter and if they matter at all still.
You guys, my preview is me laughing because Matt and I spent almost the entire time laughing. We're just responding to a TGC video, and it's just hilarious, right? It's so good. And so bad. It's so everything. I mean, so we're starting off this no longer postmortem by still doing, the TGC world, because it's just too hard not to. It is pure cringe, and we're gonna enjoy it with everyone.
And so that will be an audio show. I think we will try and put out a part of the episode, at least just the part of the episode where we're just watching the video, because it's a very short video, and we were like, we'll just quick watch it and then share our thoughts.
As we always say, famous last words on the podcast. We'll just get through this really quick.
That's right. If you have a connection at Liquid Death and would like to help them sponsor the show in either their mountain water variety or sparkling variety, I promise I'll never drink beer. If you're a Baptist, this is like your win. I'll never drink beer on the show again.
Hey, you're right. Hey, old school Methodists and Baptists, if you don't want us to drink beer on the show, buy us Liquid Death.
It comes in a tall boy. It comes in a 40. This is your chance.
See this can with skull on it? That's what wouldn't you rather us drink this?
Murder your thirst. We will not. Oh man, what a joy that will be. So we will be reaching out to Liquid Death and seeing what we can do there. If we get sponsored by them, I look forward to sending our patrons Liquid Death.
And the chances are so little. By the way, Matt always says things like, hey, what would it take to get so-and-so on our podcast? And I'm like, just a lot more work than what we are willing to put into it. And even just schedules. I was in conversation with the Clear Truth Media guy about getting him on. And then we had to cancel, I think, or maybe he had to cancel. And then we tried to do it again. And then he's just ghosted me at this point, I think. And so we're just not gonna, I think I said, all right, what are the next dates that would work? And he's just ghosted, which is fine. Like that happens.
If you are
but it just takes planning that sometimes falls through. When we're pastors, there are times when it's like, yep, we record every week at this time. And then sometimes we can't, sometimes we literally just can't do that because we have to meet with folks or something like that. And so that's the nature of it. This is always going to be something we do on the side.
Yeah, that's right. If you are a gifted scheduler, we would love for you to basically schedule things.
The problem is, even if they scheduled it, the problem is us, right? Like the problem is, oh shoot, last minute, I gotta go meet with this person or whatever. That's what we run into. So they can schedule it and it just wouldn't happen.
Well, everybody, we want you to all have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your Reformation Day. It sounds like if you're in the area, you may be having a party with Pastor Michael tomorrow. And to that end, I wish you all well.
All patrons are welcome.
All patrons.
If you wanna come to our church party, patrons can come.
That's right.
I'll send you an invite if you want to come.